Welcome to the How of Business with your host, Henry Lopez, the podcast that helps you start, run, and grow your small business. And now, here is your host.
Welcome to this episode of the How of Business. This is Henry Lopez, and my special guest today is my friend, Dr. Ramesh Rao. Dr. Rao, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation. If you're looking to or planning to or aspiring to grow a medical practice, and really what we're going to chat about applies to any business, but the expertise here that Ramesh Rao brings, Dr. Rao brings, is in growing a medical practice, then this episode is for you. He's going to share his inspirational journey as well and insights into what it takes to build a successful business, in this case, a medical practice, and on top of everything, with his wife. So we'll get his insights on how they make that work. To get more information about the How of Business, including the show notes page for this episode, and to learn more about my one-on-one and group coaching programs, please visit thehowofbusiness.com. I also encourage you to please subscribe to my podcast wherever you might be listening so you don't miss any new episodes. So let me tell you a bit more about Dr. Rao, and then we'll get into the conversation. Dr. Rao came to America as a student 33 years ago with $200 in his pocket, a very typical immigrant story. And the U.S. has been his home ever since. He earned a master's degree in neuroscience from Rutgers University and subsequently did postgraduate medical training for almost 7 years at various institutions. He's a physician with board certification in radiology and in nuclear medicine. I don't know what that means, but I'm going to ask him in a moment. And until recently, he was a partner at a large radiology practice in the Washington, D.C. metro area for 21 years. His wife, Dr. Chethana Rao, started her own medical practice 12 years ago. And in recent years, that practice has grown significantly. And so Ramesh is now focused on helping his wife build Prima Medicine. They are now on the path to building a local network of primary care and urgent care centers in the Virginia suburbs of Washington, D.C. Ramesh played an instrumental role in launching their first urgent care center in Fairfax, Virginia. And over the past couple of years, Prima Medicine has introduced new lines of service, including concierge medical care and bariatric medicine. Dr. Rao enjoys golfing, hiking, and traveling. They have a son and a daughter who both, of course, are in medical school, overachievers as well. And so Dr. Rao lives in the Fairfax, Virginia area. Dr. Ramesh Rao, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Henry. I'm really glad to be here.
Absolutely. So here's where I want to get started, Ramesh, as I always do with these stories. And first, let me also be clear that I have the privilege of coaching as a business coach, Dr. Rao, both him and his wife. And so that's how I've come to know them and their business over, it's been almost 2 years now, I think, Ramesh, is that right?
Over 2 years, that's correct.
Yeah. But you have a fascinating immigrant story. And of course, that's inspirational to me, being the son of immigrants myself. But give us a synopsis. Tell us about that story of coming to the U.S. to study and then to stay here and practice medicine.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Henry. Now, I grew up in India, in the city of Bangalore, now called as the tech city of India. In a very educated, middle-class family type of a background. I had a good childhood. My parents ensured that I got the best education that they could provide. And I'm really thankful, for my hardworking middle-class parents, who made my education a priority, and also to the love I got from my close family. Now, I pursued my medical school in India, and once I graduated, I was trying to figure out, what to do with my future. India back then was still a little bit of a socialistic economy, not like it is now. And, I was inspired by one of my friends to look towards America, for an opportunity. And that's how I started my journey. I ended up getting a scholarship to study at Rutgers and graduated there, with a master's degree in neurobiology. It's called Neuroscience these days. Subsequent to that, I started pursuing my medical residency, studied in New York, Tennessee, and Pennsylvania. and ended up getting board certified in radiology and nuclear medicine. Now, nuclear medicine is a very small specialty in the field of medicine, which deals with diagnosing and treating patients with certain conditions using radioactive substances. Okay. So that's what nuclear medicine is
Yeah.
about.
Okay. Well,
Right?
thank you. Thanks for explaining that, because I did not know. I think I'd heard that term. Now, when you came to the States, were you already married, or was that before you got
No,
married?
no, I was a single, clueless young boy. Yeah, in my early 20s, I would say. Yeah.
Wow. And then, so then it was, because you were, we happened to have the opportunity, my wife and I, to have dinner with the Rows this past weekend in Washington, D.C. But then it was on a trip back to India that you met your wife for the first time. Is that right? Or
Yeah, yeah. So it was
yeah.
a few years later, when I was settling into my residency in Tennessee, I made my first trip back home. And of course, I was sort of in that age by tradition where, I was supposed to get married. Our families were close together, like my wife's and my families, they had connections and friendships in the past. And that's how we got introduced to each other. We had in each other exactly what we were looking for. She was very focused on the kind of person she wanted to get married, and so was I. And somehow, it all felt together. It was a
Yeah.
great match for both of us. And we fell in love with each other, the first time we met.
That's fantastic. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Your dad, what did he do for a living?
Oh, yeah. My dad was an engineer in the telecommunications industry. Now, that was a very, I would say, a nationalized project back in the days. But he built one of the early microwave network in India back, 40 years ago or something like that. Before the advent of cell phones and things like that. And so, yeah, he was truly like an engineer, technologically oriented type of person.
So, when you come from that background, as a lot of immigrants do, the focus on education, and in your case, become a doctor, both you and Chestnut are doctors. Did it ever, though, cross your mind that you might also be a business owner back then? Was that something you thought about?
Personally, yes, in fact, I did. If I had not come to the US, one of my other pathways was to go out on my own
I see.
to maybe open up a small hospital.
Mm,
But that was a much difficult pathway for me at this time because we did not have the family resources, the funding and the finance to make it happen. But that was definitely a desire. Maybe I would have made it happen, who knows? But, I ended up coming to America instead.
And after you and your wife started getting established, did you know from early on, okay, we are eventually going to grow this into a business? Was that a thought that you had back
No,
then?
not really. We were a young couple. We wanted, our first priority was to establish a family,
Right.
have a stable household, and stability. Buy a house. All this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
As a young, so that was a priority. Is we never imagined that, hey, we're gonna launch this business and do this and grow it. That was definitely not in our radar at all. We just wanted like, steady and well-paying jobs.
Yeah. But if you go back to that desire that you did have, as you expressed, even back when you were living in India, where did that come from? Because I can only imagine understanding the cultural impact that what your parents, I'm sure, wanted for you is what you just described: stability, a good,
Yeah,
high-paying job.
yeah,
Whereas business is seen as very risky in some arenas. Where do you think
yeah.
that came from for you?
No, yeah, for me, yeah, that's great. I was thinking about it, and the earliest I could remember is, I would say a little story. I think when I was in elementary school, I have no idea how old I was or whatever, but I know I was like very young. 10 years or less than 10 years, I would say, is I remember this, right? I wanted to start a business raising a chicken coop, and I proposed that to my father.
Okay.
And as you can imagine, it was shot down immediately. Okay. That was my first foray into the world of
That was
business.
your first pitch, elevator
My
pitch.
first pitch. Yes. Yes. Yeah. I'm not sure if my dad remember. I don't think my dad remembers this, but this is something I remember, right? But it was subsequent to that. My goal became to pursue medicine, to get into medical school, and then after that, pursue a medical career. The residency and things like that. That pretty much took all my attention,
Right.
energy, and not to mention my time.
Right. Yeah, no, a tremendous effort that you had to put in. And then now you find yourself at this point. But before I go there, one of the reasons I ask this question is I have seen it as such a common theme that physicians, they come to it with, all of that skill set, all of that knowledge, all of that education, but the business side of it is lacking, even if they do aspire to have, something beyond just trading dollars for hours, to put it crudely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why is it, do you think, in your experience, I have some ideas, but in your experience, direct experience, why is the business side of things often a challenge for physicians?
Yeah, yeah. That's a great question, Henry. Now, as you know, the physicians are not trained by default in the business side of medicine, right? The business side of medicine is complex. People go to school just to be trained in the business side of medicine, right? And unfortunately, because the physicians are not trained, they end up getting the short end of the deal frequently, right? Now, the other factor is that the business of medicine itself is somewhat distorted compared to like another regular business, because see here, definitely in America, the seller is not setting the price, the buyer is not setting the price in the marketplace, right? There's a third party, which is the insurance company, which determines the price in the market. And I would go to the extent of saying that, even manipulate the pricing in the market.
Right.
So there's this macro factor that's out there, right? The other factor would be the physicians are sort of trained to pursue higher ideals, right? The teaching profession, the medical professions are considered to be like noble professions, generally like, all over the world, right? And also the physicians take the Hippocratic Oath, right? And specifically, the Hippocratic Oath has a negative connotation for profit. It says there in the oath, right? The modern Hippocratic Oath. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, right? But I'm just trying to come up with an explanation as to
Yeah,
why.
no, it's at the heart of this conflict that you deal with, right? It's making sure that you're delivering the patient care that you must for your integrity, but
Right.
balancing that with profit.
Exactly, right? Yeah. Now, there's a minority of physicians who do develop the business skills somehow or the other, right? Get even trained in MBA or whatnot, but they remain a minority, right? Yeah.
When you go look back to all of the hours of schooling and training that you had, how many were business type of development or training?
In terms of formal, nothing. And everything I learned about business was, because of my own interest, is learning after the fact. In my other practice where I was a partner, being in a situation where I had to know certain things to make some intelligent calls on things, and generally because I had that innate interest in about business. So, and anything about business did interest me all the time. So I read books and I learned a lot of things on my own, but to a lot of extent, this was book knowledge, but I did not have.
But it was
like
a place to start, right? You had that curiosity. Of
Yeah.
course, the thing that you have, of course, having achieved being a physician is you know how to learn. So those two things combined and that desire, you got that knowledge on your own and then begin to apply it.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Mindset wise, though, let's stay on that point, because I think that's the bigger challenge, in knowing your wife a bit and having had the privilege of working with her. She's had those mindset challenges as to what can I do, what is possible. Um, that's something I think you have helped each other with, it seems to me, as you become more and more involved in her practice.
Certainly, Henry. Similar to like our earlier conversation, my wife Chetna, like many doctors, didn't have any formal training or experience, but she came into the business with a mindset of an independent professional, right? But she was smart, but she was able to figure out a lot of things pretty quickly. But there were also like the demands of the family, right? Raising little kids in the household.
Right.
She had to maintain a very consistent positive outlook of what she was doing. Like, because in the first year or two, there was no money in, whatever that she was doing. Like, I would remember in the very early days, her secretary was making way more than how much she was making. It's the
Amazing.
truth, right? So it's very easy to get dismotivated, like, in that situation, right?
Hmm.
But in terms of the mindset, she had to keep at it. She needed a lot of encouragement. Looking at like the big picture, looking at the future, focusing on like what's possible, and keeping the hope and the motivation high was very important at that time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And during those early days, I couldn't help much because my practice was fairly busy. I could only do some back end type of help for her. But there was some unlearning to do also besides learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
The changing of the mindset requires unlearning a lot of things too, right? But there was some support which sort of smoothened out the process. We did some partnerships with some management companies, revenue cycle company. We did some outsourcing of the digital marketing,
Mm-hmm.
hiring a bookkeeper early on, leveraging technology early on. Those were very helpful to kind of save some of the mental energies, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was very critical, for the business and for her also, because she was trying to do everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing, which usually gets underrated is having a stable family, right? So having a stable family is like really important to like, give a solid ground for everything else to happen, right? Uh, so there were factors that were very helpful, to set the stage, to change the mindset and to learn the skills. Like I said, she was smart. She learned things very quickly as she went along. But I think the major pivot came when we started doing the coaching program. I know, we got to be thankful to you as a coach. You've been with us. At a certain point, we made this decision that we really need to focus and start growing this opportunity that we had in our hands. And we got on board with the coaching program, and that's been really instrumental to help change the mindset and develop our skill sets. Look at business differently than the original attitude of an independent professional.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing that. I think that the key, though, is for anybody is you have to be open to taking that input, that guidance, that advice, and you both have been, and that's why you have gotten so much out of it. Is you're open to that learning and to making those shifts in mindset. And
Mhm.
then I want to go back to the point you made, that strong family unit. You supported each other, even though you're both extremely busy with your own practices and then children, but you still supported each other. But were you also speaking to extended family that was there to help, even if it's just from afar, sometimes there? That has to have been part of it as well. What you mean by the support of the family or a strong family?
Business wise, no, there wasn't anybody who could give us business type advice.
No, but
Of course,
but they helped you with the support at home, right?
absolutely, yeah.
That
So we
foundation at
definitely, like,
home.
when the kids were little, the parents were really helpful. Each of our parents took turns visiting us and, taking care of the kids, especially, those very early days when
Hmm.
really like somebody has to be with the children like all the time. So
Yeah, yeah,
that really helped us to like maintain our careers, and, that was, uh, we can't deny that. Yeah.
huge. All right. So speaking of family, when did you figure out, both you and Chetna, that you could work together in a business? Because not all couples can. So, I would think back to the first time my wife and I started working together. It was at a business that we bought, I don't know, 15 years ago or more. And that was the first time we had worked together. And really, it was mostly me, well, almost entirely me, that had to adjust and change my attitude. And one of the things that I did at some point, I said, would I have spoken to an employee the way I just spoke to my wife? And the answer was no, right? So I had to check myself,
Yeah.
and we had to learn how to work together. But how were those early days of working together? How did that work out?
No, so there were a few things, and again, this also evolved over time to some extent.
Yes.
Um, the first thing was, both of us were focused towards the same goal, right? We wanted, this business to succeed. We knew, what needed to be done to succeed. So we were all on board with, the outcome, right? There was, that's a given thing, but
No, but it's huge being in alignment on we're heading in the same direction together. Yeah.
and like for any business to succeed, there has to be some clarity of the roles, and clarity of the hierarchy of decision, right? Any business, like not just our business, right? And our business was no different in that regard, between the spouses, right? So we had to have the clarity of each other's role and the clarity of the hierarchy of the decision, right? Now, um, and this was communicated maybe not very clearly in the beginning, but eventually, we were able to communicate that with each other, that, okay, I'm good at certain things, you're good at certain things. On certain areas, like, I make the call. On certain areas, you make the call. But eventually, at the end of the day, she is the CEO of the business. And if there's a conflict, you know, she she has the last word
Mhm.
on everything, right? And this is not just understood between the two of us, but it's also, the whole team, the management and the practice, they all know very clearly, who's the final, who has the final word and who is the boss, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that has been clearly communicated so that, they all know that we're husband and wife, and, they don't try to play off each other. And, so we've been very careful in terms of that, where although I'm a physician myself, and when it comes to the practice, I don't practice there as a physician, so they don't address me as doctor while in the practice, right?
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
that those little things we have implemented to make sure that, everybody has clarity on their, who makes a decision, who has the hierarchy, and what the roles are.
That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing that, Ramesh. And I think that's so spot on. And I've observed that obviously in working with the two of you. And that's so critical. And again, it doesn't matter what type of business when you're working with family, with a spouse. Exactly as you said is what I have found leads to success. You're on the same path, you're in alignment, so you're supporting each other. There's a reason why you're doing these things together. That delineation of roles is so important. And then at the end of the day, she's the CEO. So I love the way you shared that, and thanks for sharing that. This is Henry Lopez with a brief break from this episode to share a business opportunity with our show advertiser, the Amazon Delivery Service Partner Program. The Amazon Delivery Service Partner Program, or Amazon DSP, is designed to empower leaders who want to launch and operate their own delivery business. Amazon DSP empowers leaders like you to launch and operate your own delivery small business and work with Amazon to make an impact on your community. Since Amazon DSP launched in 2018, over 3,500 delivery service program partners have built their own business with Amazon across 19 countries, creating over 275,000 jobs and delivering over 1 billion packages to customers around the world. Amazon is looking for hands-on owners with grit who want to hire and motivate a high-performing team of local delivery associates. No existing logistics experience is required, but it is helpful to have great customer service skills and experience managing a team. By partnering with Amazon, you'll have access to exclusive deals, services, and best-in-class technology at every stage of your business. And the Amazon DSP team will provide ongoing support as you work to launch and grow your delivery business. Learn more about the Amazon Delivery Service Partner Program and apply today at amazon.com/radio. That's amazon.com/radio. You can also find the link on the show notes page for this episode at thehowofbusiness.com. Let's talk a little bit business here. When we think of a medical practice, what do you find are some of the things, some of the areas that are business related that a physician needs to either hire somebody who has those skills, or you have to learn those areas of skills? For example, you mentioned technology, and that's the thing I think one of the many areas where you've got some brilliance is you are technically savvy and you're great about analyzing where can we apply technology to improve the process, to improve the patient experience. So let's start there. That's something that I think a physician has to have or get help with to determine where and how to apply technology, right?
Absolutely. Technology is a very critical in the modern day of medicine, especially these days. 100% of all medicine is on the EMR, right? The electronic medical records, right? I wouldn't say 100% because I've still seen one or two old doctors,
right?
They still keep their little paper records. They don't want to get rid of that. I would probably say 99.5%, right? Is all like electronic these days, and the options available are pretty robust there in terms of the technologies that you want to adapt to improve your workflow. There's so many aspects of it, the patient care, the operational efficiency, the marketing. There's so many things where technology can be leveraged. And a lot of these technologies are directly integrated with your electronic medical systems, right? And they can really make the practice efficient, starting from, the whole check-in process, the patient capture process, to up to the point where, you go out and seek reviews, like the customer satisfaction or the patient satisfaction process, right? The whole cycle of patient experience, right? From the point they become a patient to all the way where you provide the service and back again. There's different types of technologies that can be utilized in all steps of the patient journey. And definitely, somebody who's new starting out, should start out with, all those technologies. Shouldn't compromise on getting technology because that's going to be very critical to make it successful.
Absolutely. It's going to become more and more a differentiator, who's applying it the right way and who's not. The thing that I've admired also about the way that you go about it is you're not afraid to try new things. And if it doesn't work out, because it doesn't always work out, making a change, pulling the plug, taking a different direction, but not letting that be a reason to say, oh, see, it doesn't work, so I'm never going to try it again. You've been very creative and open to the fact that it doesn't always work out. You have to keep trying and try different ways to do it, right?
That's right. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, that's right. It is. We got to keep trying different things because not everybody, there's these a lot of these technology companies are small companies. They're not like Google or any of the big companies. A lot of these people who we use, they're small companies themselves, and they don't know everything, right? It's very important that you understand two things. You got to understand like what your workflow is, what your process is,
Mm-hmm.
right? Then you got to understand how all these technology vendors are trying to solve that process. So those two things are important to understand, and that's going to help you make the right decisions about the kind of technologies that you're going to bring on board. But because bringing on technology is not cheap sometimes, it
Right.
involves cost, and it might involve risks sometimes,
Yeah, it
right?
causes disruption. It
Yeah,
causes, stress amongst the staff, and all of those things are a price that you pay besides the
exactly.
actual price.
Exactly. Yeah. There's all soft and hard cost, as I said,
Hmm.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So one prospective physician or provider who, is looking at a new practice or grow one's practice, has to invest some time learning about these things, because if you don't know, you can be taken for a ride. That's a
Hmm.
warning I want to leave to all the listeners out there. So put in your time to understand all these things and don't get taken for a ride.
Exactly. Yeah, to
Yeah.
that point, that's such a good point, Ramesh. One of the things I always advise related to that is be very careful with committing to any kind of long-term agreement that you either can't get out of or is costly to get out of, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so all of this comes to then in mind where you guys are at. Summarize for us or tell us that what Prima Medicine looks like today. How many locations, and tell us what it looks like today and where you're going.
Oh, yeah, yeah, wonderful. Thanks, Henry. So, yeah, we've been paying a lot of attention and focus over the past several years, and been able to accelerate the growth of the company. The most we've been expanding. We started off as a primary care practice, catering to the local area, but recently we expanded into urgent care. We launched our first urgent care very recently last year, and looking to grow that part of our service with hopefully more urgent cares in the near future. Then we also launched a concierge care program that's with Dr. Rao, the Chethana Rao, my wife, and that was another new type of service or new line of service that we launched. And lately, we also launched a bariatric medicine, which is the weight loss medicine service. And we have a couple of really solid people. One's already on board, another coming on board very soon to develop that line of service, which we see a lot of growth potential in. Now, where we are today is, is I would say, if you ask me, like, what's your pitch, I would say, that if you want to be cared for by experienced and knowledgeable doctors who are getting consistent 5-star ratings for how they care for the patients, and who are being nominated as top doctors by the Washingtonian magazine 8 years in a
As
row.
Dr. Rao was, again.
Yes, absolutely, right? You should seriously look at, the services we offer at Prima Medicine, right? We had doctors at multiple locations in the county, Northern Virginia, right? And, we also provide extended care at our centrally located urgent care center, right? And our board certified doctors are in internal medicine, family medicine, lifetime medicine, and now obesity medicine, right? So, so if any of this fits your need, you have to look at our Prima Medicine.
And then also now, in particular through the urgent care, you're supporting things like Department of Transportation exams and corporate medical needs as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So we have now we started taking on corporate clients for some of the medical needs, especially for occupational medicine type of services, and that's been working out very well.
Primarily Fairfax, Virginia, but what are the surrounding cities or suburbs that people might recognize as well that you
Oh
have
yeah,
patients
so
coming from?
our offices, we are in two counties at this point, which are adjacent. It's Northern Virginia. area. One is Loudoun County and Fairfax County. Fairfax County is our main office, and we have offices in Fairfax. That's the name of the city itself is Fairfax. Then we have Merrifield and South Riding. Those are the areas in, where proximity to, very close proximity to Fair Oaks, Chantilly, Aldi, Vienna. And, we're also looking at potentially expanding into the Arlington, Virginia, and the Tyson's Corner and Vienna, Virginia areas.
Excellent. So speaking of, I know that, this is just the start. Your plan is to continue scaling this business. So tell me a little bit about that. At a high level, where do you envision you're working towards being in the next 3 to 5 years?
Oh yeah, thanks, Henry. Yeah, I mean, thanks to your support and inspiration, we've been consistently setting goals beyond, our own expectations and limitations. We sort of have this benchmark of around pre-COVID or COVID time, that's around when we decided that, we really have to really go full out on this business. So our goal is to do 5x from that baseline in the next 2 years. Then the other bigger goal that we have is to structure this business in such a way that it's a self-managing business, a scalable self-managing business, and hopefully in about a 3-year time period.
And so tell me a little bit about what that means to you. It's interesting because I was just remembering when I first had the opportunity to start coaching Dr. Rao. She was very adamant that while she wanted to grow the practice, she wanted to still see patients. And I'm sure she still does because, the part of why you're a doctor and especially a successful doctor is because you love the practice of medicine, right? You have a
Correct. Yeah.
calling, a passion, whatever you might call it. But so when you say self-managing, if you could share with us, at least at a high level, what you think that will look like for you and Chethana 3 to 5 years from now. What will that look like for you think?
Yeah, certainly, Henry. Yeah. Just to touch upon a point before that is
Sure.
that now Chetna is seeing much fewer patients
Mm-hmm.
today than she was, 2 years ago when we
Right.
started the
Through
coaching
through her
program.
concierge practice
Yeah,
now,
because the
right?
concierge practice,
Right.
right? Much, much fewer. So a very, very limited panel of patients, that she takes care of through the concierge program, right? So that's progress. That's progress, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, and now to answer your question about what it means to us, in terms of a self-managing company uh, is to structure the operations and the growth of the company in such a way that we are no longer involved at all in the day-to-day operations, definitely no longer involved in patient care. That is, Chetna would no longer be involved in patient care. But, just limited to leadership type of activities, like a monthly or quarterly leadership type of activities with the business, and having the proper team in place so that the company has consistent growth and consistent earnings. So that's how I would envision,
Yeah.
how this self-managing company would be.
So what do you say then to somebody who's listening, a physician who's listening, who would have been maybe like Chetna a few years ago or a couple years ago, says, "Oh, I'd never want to not practice." That's again, like I said, that's what I love doing. How has, from your observation, for you, it wasn't as hard as a mindset shift, but how has she reconciled that now? What is it that she sees in the future that allows her to feel good about and comfortable and that she's ready to make that transition? Where do you think that came from?
I was really surprised. As you rightly mentioned, she was very resistant in the beginning to accept some of these very fundamental ideas about, what needs to be done to create a leveraged and scalable business. But having been exposed to the coaching program and, similar peers, she eventually came around, and now she completely understands and accepts the principles which are necessary to build the self-managing and scaling business, right?
Mhm.
So now I think the other part of the question is, what would you say to, a young physician or provider who might be considering starting a practice? So I would say, no, this sounds like cliche, but I would say don't be afraid to take the risk, because this is sustainable business. Medicine is a sustainable business. If you're young, you better make the mistakes when you're young.
Mhm.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes, but also get expert help early on. Don't get swayed by the naysayers. You get expert help early on and take the risk, and you will succeed.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so interesting how risk averse physicians can be in general. And again, it's a mindset issue, how risk
Right.
averse, despite the fact that they've made this tremendous investment in your schooling and education and training, you've invested years of your life in getting here.
Yeah,
But yet the thought of, growing a practice seems monumental, right? It's an interesting mindset challenge.
absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot of people, have that. And I'm sure, we've seen that both among doctors and, among others.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's a pretty common thing.
Yeah.
In a lot of people get into the field of medicine, like, looking for security and safety and, taking the risk. In a business, launching a business which has a lot of inherent risk is a very difficult idea to come around.
Agreed. Agreed. So to that end, where I'd like to end with is, you had shared with me as we were preparing for this conversation, your one's destiny. And you'll have to tell me, kind of how you put this together, but it's a combination of things. Will you walk me through that, the way that you look at it, what you
Yeah.
called
So,
one's destiny?
yeah, yeah, thank you. Yeah. So, I was just thinking about it, and, I just wanted to put together, and it just came together this way. And, hopefully maybe I can write a book about it one of these days for
I'm
you.
sure you will.
Yeah, yeah, and then maybe I would definitely need help to write a book about
That-
it. Okay,
That's
but
okay.
I sort of have an acronym called Destiny, like DESTA, right? And Y is just to like round up the word, like
hmm
destiny, right? So,
I see. It's
but
an acronym. The DSTA is an acronym. Destiny.
yeah,
Love it.
yeah,
Okay. Got it.
right. Desta, right? Destiny, right? So anyway, so that's sort of how I would like to summarize the secret of success, if you want to call it that way, right? But one premise to that, though, is I have to say that having a positive desire or a dream is a gift in itself, right? Whether or not you achieve it. So we had to acknowledge that for whatever reason that you have a desire and you have a dream, right? Because I have seen the extremes of humanity, right? Uh, and having this spark of a desire and this spark of a dream is something that cannot be underrated, right? So I would say, first of all, be thankful that you have a dream and a desire
hmm
to do something positive, something more, to do something more than what you already are,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Now, there's a lot of factors that go into making something, somebody successful or a dream possible, right? You got to have the energy in the body and in your mind, right? And that was one of the things I was listening to. I gotta say, I'm blanking out right now, but
It's okay.
yeah, one of the first lessons is like, which was he brought out, may not be his original idea, but he said the energy, right? The energy is, more important, right? So, and that's true. I completely agree. Is that, you had to like do something to yourself where you are able to maintain the energy of your body and your mind, like whatever it might be, right? Like
Yeah.
exercise or, whatnot, right? So the energy in your mind and body is important. Otherwise, like, what can you do? You can't do nothing, right? And there's the skills and the abilities, right? You got to like have all the skills and the abilities to do whatever that you need to do. Some people are better at it, some people are not, right? So, but that's a process, and the methods and technique, right? You could have all these other things, but you could be doing the wrong things because you don't know, what's the right thing to do, and you don't have the proper techniques. You're following the wrong methods, right? So you got to get that part right? And the other part is the attention and the focus, right? The A would be the attention and the focus that you need to have, and you had to be consistent. You had to stay motivated, and you got to keep working at it, right? So all these have to come together, and you're gonna have a great destiny.
It's beautiful, inspirational. I'm going to have that spelled out on the show notes page for this episode
Wonderful.
at thehowofbusiness.com, because I think it's inspirational and very practical. So thank you for sharing that. And I can definitely see, Ramesh, where you could write a book, certainly a good
Yeah,
section
yeah,
of a book
yeah.
on it,
Yeah.
amplifying those things.
Like, I'm sure there are people out there who can help people like me, right?
Oh,
Right?
absolutely.
I would
There
love to, like,
there
talk
are,
to them.
absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that, at least at a high
Yeah,
level here on this episode today. So
thank you.
we will wrap things up. What's one thing that you want us to take away from this conversation that we had about, if we bring it back to the focus, growing a medical practice, but really everything you've shared applies to just about any business. But what's one thing you want us to take away from the conversation that we had?
Oh, yeah. Thanks. So, definitely, parting words for like aspiring, medical entrepreneur who wants to start a practice is that, launching and running a medical practice is a sustainable business, right? It can make you wealthy. It can give you satisfaction, right? Even in this age of AI, right? You can still do it. And, take that bold step. There are resources out there. There's a rich load of resources on the internet. You go to your medical society, or, do that. And, I'll be happy, to even like talk to, somebody potentially who might be interested and, learn about some specific things. They can reach me through Henry, right?
Absolutely. Anybody can post a message, as well as give us the Prima Medicine website. If somebody wants to learn more about Prima Medicine, where do we go?
Yeah. They can go to primamedicine.com. It's www.primamedicine.com. It's people say Prima Medicine, but we like to call it as Prima Medicine, although it's spelled the same way. It's Prima Medicine, because that sort of rhymes with primary care.
Mm-hmm.
So we like to say it as Prima Medicine.
Prima Medicine.
So that's
absolutely.
Yeah, and reach us through the website. There's a place on the website that you can contact us, or reach us through the How a Business podcast, right?
Absolutely. Excellent. Ramesh, thank you so much for this inspirational conversation, for sharing of your journey and your experience on how to build a practice. I appreciate you taking the time to be with me today.
Thank you, Henry. I had a great time talking to you.
This is Henry Lopez, and thanks for joining me on this episode of The How of Business. My guest today again is Dr. Ramesh Rao. I release new episodes every Monday morning, and you can find the show anywhere you listen to podcasts, including the How of Business YouTube channel and at my website, thehowofbusiness.com. Thanks again for listening.
Thank you for listening to The How of Business. For more information about our coaching programs, online courses, show notes pages, links, and other resources, please visit thehowofbusiness.com.